Hello and welcome back to the Eyes Up Life podcast with me, your host, Ben Granis. I am so pleased that you chose to spend your time with me today on the Eyes Up Life podcast. Eyes Up started as a 7,000-mile bike ride around the United States that I did solo to raise awareness for distracted driving. Along the way, I met hundreds of people and became really committed to this mission to end distracted driving and also to help people have healthy relationships to their phone, because I've seen and experienced firsthand how harmful it can be to become addicted to our phones while we're in the car and also while we're out of the car. And life, I've found, is a lot more rich when we're not so committed to our phones and so attached to them as we are, as so many of us are. Shortly after completing the ride, I set out on a road trip to interview 21 athletes who are sponsored by Maxxis tires and interviewed them, created this video series in partnership with Maxxis, and I'm also putting out the full conversation in the format of the Eyes Up Life podcast. So if you haven't caught the rest of the series, make sure you check that out. Subscribe to this podcast, follow Eyes Up Ride on Instagram, and also subscribe to Maxxis Tires on YouTube so you don't miss any of the future episodes. Today we're speaking with Lou Lewis. He goes by Lou. He's a great guy, a father of one son, and I met him in his garage in sunny California. Sort of painting the picture, he had memorabilia from his early work with Jeremy McGrath, and I don't want to spoil too much of the conversation, but he worked hand in hand with the greatest Supercross racer of all time, Jeremy McGrath, and helped capture some of his early moments in his career while he was riding, and created a lot of films in his own film company. And Lou's perspective is really quite interesting because it spans such a long period of time. He's seen the transition from film to digital to totally cloud-based filming, as well as the introduction of cell phones to smartphones to where we are today. And I know you'll appreciate his perspective and his thoughts on the whole process, especially since he has a son who also has a phone now. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Lou Lewis, and we'll talk to you at the end. Thank you.
My name is Lawrence Lewis. I live in Canyon Lake, California.
Sweet. And why am I talking to you? Like, what's your connection to Maxxis in this whole world?
I've been an athlete. I've been a team manager, athlete manager. I've been race organizer. Since I was a little kid, I've been very interested in competition and racing, whether it was on bicycles, motorcycles, off-road cars, whatever it is. It's always had wheels, and it's always been a big part of my life.
And so tell me about your early life growing up and what that looked like.
I grew up in the mountains, up in Big Bear, California. And it was a recreational community. And as long as I can remember, I have been on a bicycle or hiking or skiing, snowboarding, fishing. So I've always lived an outdoors adventure lifestyle, whether it's been since, first car I had was a Toyota truck, and the reason I got it was so we could go camping and off-roading. So I've always been very active on a motorcycle, trucks, desert, just taking advantage of outdoor life.
What's your favorite part about being outside?
I guess that's just where I feel most comfortable. Put me in the middle of a city, subways, I start to panic on that one. That's not where I feel good.
Right.
My happy spot would be remote in the mountains. You can't hear anything. You're with yourself and hopefully a few friends, and you're on motorcycles and you're taking on a few hundred miles a day. That's where I feel most comfortable.
So we were chatting. It sounds like you made some really good friends in the motorcycle, dirt bike world. Can you tell me about some of those people who you worked with?
Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, obviously the most famous person that I've worked with is Jeremy McGrath. He's, become one of the most recognized motorcycle riders in the world. It was just a chance meeting, really, when I had to move from Big Bear, which there was no college or no education past high school up there. I graduated. I moved down to a town called Temecula, California, and ended up, running into Jeremy. We were, about the same age. I was formerly a professional ski racer in the snow, and he was, just starting his, professional career on a motorcycle. So, we kind of hit it off right away as both having a competitive side. And I think that's, what generated our friendship right away was if we were playing golf, if we were riding bicycles, I mean, bowling, whatever it might be. It sounds funny, but I think that just when you grow up like that and you're with someone like that, it helps elevate your game. So, I wasn't ever intending to be a professional motorcycle rider, but it was great to have someone that had that competitive edge, and it led me down a path again where I didn't know I was going to go, into racing every weekend, and to finally, being into a movie business where he and I had a business called Clutch Films, and we started making motocross movies in the desert. And again, I was right at home. Like that's where I like to be, like out in the middle of nowhere, filming and capturing what I've done my whole life. So, I mean, that's probably, in a nutshell, like the way that I think, he and I really, became friends, and it helped both of our careers really. You take away the seriousness of the weekend by going out in the mountains and going out in the hills and riding. So it's a nice balance. I think a lot of people even now kind of miss that. Like you need to have a balance. It's not just on the track training all the time. You need to get away, recharge your batteries, like get out in, places like Glamis or, the desert.
How long in your career did the film making with Jeremy span, and what happened when that's sort of last forever? What transitioned? What did you transition?
It didn't. It's still lasting. I'm just kidding. It was funny. Like again, we didn't know we were gonna make movies. It just we were out, riding, and I got injured. But I didn't care. I still wanted to go on the trips. So I had a camera. I started filming, and we got the idea like, hey, I think people would like to see this, out in the open, hitting these jumps. Like we're just doing this stuff for ourselves, but I'm sure people would be pretty interested that we're hitting 100-foot jumps and, doing tricks for each other.
100 feet?
Yeah, like no problem. Bigger in the sand dunes. And you're only doing it for a group of 7, 8 friends. Like looking back on it now, thinking of, what could have happened. Like we never looked at that side of the coin. It was like, let's hit this jump. Let's have a good time. We're going to, it's an adrenaline rush. Like we're in the middle of nowhere so many times. Like if someone really did get hurt, like we would have probably been in a pinch. But anyway, so we made our first film just kind of by accident, and it it's called Steel Roots, and it blew up. Like the industry loved it. Everybody was taken back. Like these Supercross guys that are in the stadiums are out riding in the hills, hitting jumps way bigger than they are on a Supercross track, and they're just doing it for fun, not even for no pay, which I thought was cool. I thought was interesting. Everyone did. So with that, boom, we have a company called Clutch Films, and we're making movies. So it's funny that we're talking about it now. It's been 25 years since that first release of that first movie.
Wow.
And we're going back and looking at some of that footage, and of course we're thinking, man, we're just kids, which we were. The thing about it though is, we still like the same things. Like I don't know how many people can say, hey, what I was doing 25 years ago, I still have just as much passion about today, and I'm still racing on the weekends. Jeremy's still racing on the weekends. I don't know. It's a lifestyle. That's what it is, and I think that's why we named our movie series Steel Roots. It was like, hey, our background comes into play with like bicycles, motorcycles, like something that like always has to do with like the steels, wheels, and that's our roots. So, and it still is.
So what like when you were making these films, what were some of the things that really captured your attention, and what was exciting about making those movies?
I think the best part about making the films, and the part that was a little bit different than what most people saw is filming started where we were out in the hills riding, we were hitting big jumps. So we had no film experience. We were always, me and Jeremy and a bunch of our friends, we were always in the hills riding, hitting big jumps, just to kind of push each other a little bit. We kept talking about filming it and saying, man, some people would love to see this. None of us had any experience filming. We probably wasted, a few of our best years like out in the hills hitting jumps and riding without any documentation of it. It wasn't until we really got serious about like making a film and said, all right, we're going to go to Glamis Sand Dunes. We're going to bring some guys that do know how to make movies, and they're going to, capture this for us the first day. Well, I got a little excited day one and came out of the box and hit a huge sand dune jump, overjumped it, broke my hand, broke my ankles, just completely wadded it up. And nobody got it on tape. Nobody got it on film. Like, we were there to make a movie, and I was expected to, I guess I was expecting myself to step it up, and this was my big chance. Like, I wasn't a professional rider, but I could hit jumps and I could ride. So I was thinking, all right, I'm just going to show everybody what I'm made of. Huge mistake. Like, I came out of the box, hit the huge jump. Nobody got it on tape. And, there I was in the hospital for, a good few weeks recovering.
What sort of injuries did you have?
So I broke my hand in like multiple places where the bones, came out. I broke both my ankles. I had strained my back. I tore my ACL. Like, it was a disaster. But, if anything good came out of that, first off, I was super pissed that nobody got it on tape. I'm like, we were there to film, and I just did a jump that probably would still be running at the front of, any crash and burn movie or on ESPN as, the agony of defeat, and no one got it. So it's funny to think, like, I'm so bummed nobody got my huge crash, but that was one thing that got to me. I still wanted to go on the trips. I still wanted to go be a part of the production. The only difference was now, I'm laid up. I'm on crutches, so I grab a camera and I start shooting, video. The thing is, because of that crash, though, I realized I am never going to miss another crash. Like, if I'm going to do this in film, like I'm going to start applying what I know from riding, from being an athlete, to making this film. Like, I need to know where the hazards are. And we had camera A and camera B filming, the money shots, as they would call it. But for some reason, I was always in the spot, because knowing what happened to me, like, this is where things go wrong, and they go wrong on your first attempt. So real quick, I realized, okay, I'm the guy that starts getting all the crashes. And the guys we're working with, they were from the Krusty Demons, the Dirt movies. They're snowboarders. They know how to make films, but they don't know, like, when a motocross guy crashes, he's done, usually for the day or the week, maybe even a month. Like, they see snowboarders crash and like, okay, let's go again, and miss the jump, or not miss the jump, but miss the crash. So anyways, I just felt like, at that point, I'm never going to miss that. They taught me, there's multiple parts of getting these shots. So, the other filmmakers that were there, and I was the one that was coming in with all the A+ shots, and they just so happened to be either a close call or a crash shot, which is what everybody wants to see in the movie. Like, that's it. With Jeremy, that doesn't happen very often. So, if he crashes, you better get it. And I think there's maybe one crash or two crashes in the first movie we made, and they're both shots that for sure I got, because I vowed to myself, never miss a crash. So
your first movie was 25 years ago, which was well before social media and that's like sort of the online promotion piece of things. How did you gain traction with your productions?
This was early 90s we're making the films. And typically going through the process of making a film and trying to release it in a theater, was going to be very difficult. We had no idea how that was going to work. And if we knew, if we knew anything about it, we probably would have never started, but we just went for it anyways. We're like, we're going to do it. And luckily enough, Jeremy was sponsored by Fox Clothing. The guys at Fox were really, really cool. They were very interested in making movies themselves. And they had a massive distribution network for clothing. So they got really smart and creative and just started marketing our movies to motorcycle shops, which was brilliant because then it drove people to the shops to buy the film. And then in turn, you're buying your gear. Shops loved it. Every shop had a TV that was looping our movies constantly. 25 years later, I will still run into people that say, hey, that was your movie, Steel Roots. Like, you don't have no idea how many times I watched that. I worked the front counter at the Yamaha shop, and that thing would loop for 3 years. So I know every word. Like, we would wear the VH tapes out. So it was an interesting method. It worked. It became the standard. Like, every year we started releasing a movie. Like, we'd film all year, have a movie out before Christmas. And then lots of guys started doing it. Lots of other riders, teams, Moto Triple X, they would use those movies to finance their racing, finance their team. And I mean, it was a great time. We were loving watching other people's films too. Everyone had kind of their own little twist on it. A lot of guys trying to make a name for themselves. We really tried to focus on traveling to unique locations, having the best riders, and doing something that was a little bit different than on the Supercross track or what people were used to seeing in stadiums. So it was and then putting, a soundtrack to it that seemed relevant at the time. So we always would put in some, really hard music, some metal, and try to adapt the song to the location and, also pick what we liked. And it was a good recipe. It worked.
So how many years were you doing this sort of like full time, the movie production?
I would say we probably had a solid 10 years of making something every year. Even when Jeremy kind of stopped, riding fully in the movies, we had a company called Clutch Films, and then it would produce some other riders. So we produced a film with all the Thor riders one time. So we got to work with, Chad Reed and Grant Langston, and Pastrana. Like, we'd work for, the brand. At that time it was Thor. So we would make a film for them. Then we did another one that was just purely in the sand, and we just did sand dunes. So we started putting some sand cars into it and just mixing it up a little bit. And then we even did, some that were just about mini bikes. So every year we would try to just gravitate to what was fun, what we were doing, and hoped people liked it. And luckily, everyone seemed to like what we were doing, and it became, the next thing on the list. Check, we did that movie. Now what are we going to do? Now where are we going to go? So now we're going to go to Australia, or now we're going to go to Brazil. So it was cool. It was like planning our vacations and bringing our dirt bikes with your friends. What's better than that?
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah. So I think it's gonna be tough to get to every bit and also get to the distracted driving piece, but I do want to hear about
let's get to
athlete management. Like what's that like? Because that was more recent, right?
Correct. So with the birth of YouTube was the demise of home video, which is what all this was. So I don't know. It was probably, right around, I'm guessing 2000, 2008, 10, somewhere around there maybe, that we release a movie, and within a week it's on YouTube and no one's buying the movie. So that was when we had to, kind of pivot, or I had to pivot basically and do something else. Jeremy was winding down his Supercross career, and he'd done everything. He checked off all the boxes he needed to do there. But I had been working with, dozens of athletes this whole time, whether we're traveling together. We're still doing contracts, or I'm doing contracts for all the music, doing contracts for the riders. We're figuring out, what kind of royalties are going to bands. So in the process of movie making, I'm also learning how to figure out the legal side, manage athletes, manage bands, have premieres. So naturally, my friends, some of the other guys that I'd been working with had asked me, to help them out with their careers. Freestyle motocross was getting really big at that time. So I was able to work with, some of the very, pioneers of freestyle motocross, started putting on some freestyle events and helping some of the riders. I mean, I worked with Deegan, I worked with, again, Travis during that time, Mike Jones, Mike Sinkmeyers, like a lot of the original, guys that were involved in freestyle. I was also working with, helping them with launching their freestyle careers and their, motocross careers.
Cool.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Right.
Does that sound like bullshit?
I mean, you can tell me anything, I believe it. So. That's the beauty of not knowing much about this world, So you've seen the industry through a lot of different phases of media and production. So I'm curious to hear what your experience has been with the online side of things and like kind of adjusting into that, with YouTube coming out and social media, Instagram, and where are you now with all of that as well?
Okay, so I mean, looking back on all this, it was all promotion. Like, even though we just thought we were having fun riding, every bit of it from day one. That's why Fox is distributing our videos. That's why people are getting paid to ride freestyle. That's why these contracts are coming in from manufacturers. All of what we were doing was promotion for athletes and for brands. It's the same as what's going on today. It's actually, with the birth of social media, I think it's exploded again. Content has been more important as it is right now. Everyone's able to go out and make their own content, which is exciting. You don't need a crew. Like, if you're talented and you live in rural Mississippi, you can go out and get some footage, post it online, and show what you're made of. I mean, I love it. I think it's a great time for people to launch their own brands and to get the feedback like right away. Sometimes it might be harsh. Sometimes you might it starts trending and all of a sudden you get jackpot. You've made a brand. So I like it. I totally support what's going on. You got to be careful. There's a balance for sure. You can't just be completely locked in. But I think good ideas and exposure are great right now on social media and on that platform.
Yeah, it's a super helpful tool, and anyone can jump in. What's your like daily usage of social media? Is it mostly for promoting your own work, or do you find yourself on the side of consuming quite a bit?
I think we're all guilty of, you go on to look at what your friends are doing. You go on Instagram, or you check in to see what people are posting, and typically to see like where they're riding, like what your friends are doing, and if you're going to catch up with them, or hey, we just saw a good riding spot, like we should go to this track tomorrow, or it just rained. So we all check in and I think follow each other in that respect. And it's super. I mean, yes, is it easy to get distracted? And I mean, that's what the algorithms are for in social media. It pulls you another direction, and then all of a sudden, you're looking at a resort in Cancun that has nothing to do with with riding. But I still think that it all goes back to balance. Like, you just have to have like a platform of knowing, you need to be outside. People need to be doing things with their family. You need to, have face-to-face time. And sure, is there some time to promote yourself if you're building a brand? Absolutely. Is there, a time to help, educate, even some younger athletes? I mean, at this time, if, I'm still managing some young drivers, and you have to be careful. You also have to be very aware of what you are doing, because everything now is permanent. You post something, it's there forever. You need to, more than ever, have media training and make sure what you're putting out there is something that you want the world to know you for.
Right. Absolutely. So you're a parent of, do you just have one son?
Yeah, I have a 14-year-old son.
14-year-old son. Does he have a cell phone?
He does.
When did he get his cell phone? How old is he?
We waited. I know that sounds funny because I got him a cell phone when he was in 7th grade, which seems like still too young, but
So he was probably 12 or something?
yeah. Yeah.
The average American child these days gets a cell phone between 7 and 8 years old.
Right. Which I cannot agree with.
5 years younger, but 12 is still super young.
Yeah, and they're also using, I mean, a cell phone is not a babysitting device, and it shouldn't just be something that's used to keep your kids quiet. It's a communication device, and I mean, I would love if he didn't have one at all, but really, there's no way around it. He needs to, if he's with his friends, I know where he's at. If he needs a ride home or something, it gives him a little bit more freedom to be able to, I guess, ride around the community on his bicycle, or, be able to ask me like, hey, can I do something, Dad, without having to like make that decision on the spot. I think when I was a kid, you'd leave in the morning and come back at night, and your parents never knew you were. I don't know if I could handle that right now in this day and age. I kind of want to know like what's going on, and maybe we are a little bit more programmed and slaves to the device. But I mean, we try to limit the screen time, and we still are very involved with sports and time on bikes and away from the phone. But it's a necessary tool. Is it an evil tool? Sometimes. Does it consume too much of your time? Probably. But, again, just like I think through my life, you have to adapt, and you have to figure out what works for you, what doesn't, and try to have that, that balance there.
So you mentioned that you are you married or
no? Yeah, I'm just a single dad. So I have my son full time.
So you work to manage his screen time. What are some things that you do to try to manage it, or help him be aware of it?
Well, I mean, typically when he's in school, like, it's the weirdest thing now. Like, up until he's in high school now, so up until now, it was like when you're at school, you're not using your phone at all. Like, there's no screen time. It's locked. If he needs to call me, he can call me. Just simple. Pay attention. Now they're incorporating your phone so heavily into following your grades, turning in your assignments, that again, I'm at another crossroads, like trying to figure out where we go with this next. In his school, all of the assignments are done on the phone, quizzes are done on the phone, and you turn in your assignments. They send back, constant emails, updates. Everything is monitored through your phone. So again, we're at that part where, is it too much? I think it is. I don't have an answer for it. I mean, right now, like, he's doing everything he's supposed to. He's spending his time wisely with soccer. His grades are good. When he gets home, for sure, we'll put the phone, put it on the counter. We try to have, our dinner time. We try to do something outside. He has a responsibility to take his dog for a walk. There's certain things that do not need a phone, and that has to happen. I think no matter what, you have to pull that out of your pocket. And even myself, like, you need to just set it aside and go do something and not depend on it. It's become, it's become a part of everyone's life. We're connected in a way, and then we're disconnected in a way.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting how like deeply ingrained it is in every aspect of life, because like you didn't have a cell phone growing up, so you could probably imagine a world where you're raising your son without a phone, but like realistically, how do you do that if you need your phone for turning in assignments or things like that?
Yeah.
And so finding a solution is tough, but like where do you see, like, what's the next step in this like progression that we're on in needing technology for everything?
I mean, it's it's kind of a scary situation right now. It's a scary time. The the people making these apps and programs, they make them to keep you on your phone. Like, I think we're being programmed more than ever right now to just constantly have a phone. And like you just said, there's a great time in my life, and my thought when I go on vacation, I try to pick places that there isn't service. Like, we go to the dunes, we go to the desert, we go places I'm happy to go there. There's no service. There's no talking back. That's it. It's perfect. And I think kids that have been raised with a phone in their hand, in our future are going to freak out. Like, they're not going to know what it's like to not have a phone. It's like they're blanky. When I was a kid, like you have that separation anxiety. It's it's troubling, but I think that the technology it's making it almost mandatory, like to function in society. You have to have a phone. I don't know anyone. Do you know anyone that doesn't have a cell phone?
No, but I met someone last month who has never had a smartphone. It's someone like my age, and they have a dumb phone, like a flip phone.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating. I didn't get a chance to talk to them that much, but it was that's such a unicorn, to find someone like that. I'm curious to hear, Lou, if you ever look at like the screen time on your phone. Like, is that part of, because it seems like you're very aware of both you and your son's exposure to life outside of your phone, which I think is awesome, and everyone would benefit from having more of that.
Yeah.
But is it like something where you're like aware of how much you're actually using your phone?
Yeah, I totally know, and I've used it too much, and it depends what's going on. If there's like, I managed off-road race teams, and if there's something that's like coming up on the schedule, or there's a change in the schedule, it goes out through your phone. When it's a race weekend, you'll look and go, what, 8 hours, like 9 hours I was looking at my phone, like the entire day. You're getting people wristbands to get in, you're checking lap times, you're facilitating sponsors, you're doing photos, you're doing social media. Like, literally, I'm at events and I'm not at the event. I'm on my phone, and it's a major bummer. But I don't know any other way at this juncture how to solve the problem. Everyone depends on it, and if there's something that comes up immediately, like you get an alert, and hey, there's been a change in the schedule. So it's again, it's one of those things. Like, is it helping the race day move along? Probably. I don't have to run up to the ticket booth. I'm able to put people's names on lists. You're able to facilitate things, but would I prefer to be old school and watch the race and see everybody face to face and shake their hand when I see them, like, oh, it's a long time, I haven't seen you, rather than knowing every minute I'm at the gate, I'm almost there, I'm coming in. Like, I feel phones do that. Like, they just add too much information to what's going on, and everybody needs to do it. Like, hey, you didn't check in. Why didn't you answer? Like, have you ever not answered a message in 15 minutes or 20 minutes during an event? People start freaking out. Like, you looking at 6 messages, like, why do I have 6 from you? It's only been 20 minutes. Can I take a shower? Can you do something away? I was in a meeting. Like, it's weird. People start panicking. If you're someone that gets back to them always, and then there's a delay, people start freaking out, and they start to have that panic. And I mean, I know it's the same scenario, and I know, when you're driving, that's a big problem too. People cannot disconnect themselves. How are you going to drive 6 hours or drive somewhere in traffic and you're not constantly connected to your phone? I think that's everyone. I mean, you look over traffic, driving, everyone's talking, I would say 90% of the time, if you're at a red light, someone has to honk to get the person from going, because they've already stopped. Their ADD's kicked in for 5 seconds, and they're scrolling and looking, and then, oh, red light, okay, green light, go. It's crazy.
Yeah, so talk to me, what you kind of just described it, but what comes to mind when you think of distracted driving?
Distracted driving, when I I guess there's always been some sort of distraction. I remember when I first started, the distraction was your tape deck. About dating myself here, but the distraction, when you're younger was, hey, are you changing your music out, or is it too loud or something? Like, so there's always, I think, been some sort of, you need to be focused when you drive. And that's what your original, driving instructor, your original classes are for, to like you're driving a vehicle that's 4,000 pounds, can go 100 miles an hour, and you're with thousands of other people at the same time doing it. Like, you need to be focused, and be aware of what you're doing. You're driving something that can cause other people harm, and a split second is all it takes to have an accident. Now today, distractions. Oh my God! I mean, I can't imagine like having this when I was taking my driving test growing up. Like, now you look over and there's kids in the back seat. They all have their phones going with TikTok videos blasting. Mom's on the phone. She's got 10 places to be. You got Starbucks coffee jamming through your veins with caffeine. There's tons of traffic. I mean, it's right now more than ever, you're dealing with so many distractions. I mean, it's rare to not see some sort of little incident when you're on a drive nowadays. Something is a close call. Something is a little fender bender because of simple distractions. And it's not that people are bad drivers. There's just too much going on.
Talk to me about your relationship to distractions in the car when you're driving.
I mean, I'm guilty of it too. Like, there's times where you jump in the car, and even if you're just going grocery hopping, and you got a short distance, and you get a buzz on your phone. Like, you reach over, grab your phone. Now with hands free, it's a lot easier. But when that wasn't there, you'd grab your phone, you'd pick it up, or you'd be looking for it. And there's, I'm sure, been times where all of us have, been distracted. You look up and you realize you've crossed the line, and you do a quick, one of these back, and you're like, oh, not thinking anything of it. But I mean, those are the times. Can be a head-on collision. There can be someone running a red light. You could run a red light. There is just, there's very little room for error. And when the error happens, like, someone's going to pay the price.
So I think you're obviously very aware of the potential consequences to driving distracted. And I'm sure most people who are using their phone or doing something else while they're driving know that either that they shouldn't be, or know that there's a potential deadly consequence of doing that. What do you think it is that draws us to ignore those potential consequences and continue to drive distracted?
Well, because I mean, I think you still allow your personal life to get in the car with you, or your business life, or whatever it is. Usually when you get in the car, like, you're supposed to check your mirrors, you're supposed to put your seatbelt on, you're supposed to just do the standard things to get ready and drive. Now it's, you clip your phone in, you sync your car, like you're making, that's part of now your driving program. So you're aware that you're going to be talking, you're going to be using your phone while you're driving. So you've already kind of allowed the distraction in the vehicle with you right off the bat. The hands-free was a great way to try to eliminate some of those problems. But again, it's like driving around with a car full of rattlesnakes. There's things around you all the time that are happening with your phone, with music, with other vehicles. And if you got a car full of kids, I mean, I don't know about you, but when my son's in the car and he's got friends in there, I try to get them off their phone and start talking to them and get them some interaction between them. Like, hey, which one of you has a girlfriend now? Hey, did you guys see, that new video on Monster's page? Have you seen, what's going on with your grades? Like, try to get some communication going between them and have them put their phones down. But typically I'll jump in another friend's car and everyone's listening to something, and you hear like 5 phones going on. Like, it's irritating for sure, but it's major distractions.
That's so interesting. I hadn't really thought about other people in the car. I mean, obviously it's a distraction and it's something that they talk about in driver's ed and everything.
Yep.
But like, I've been so kind of like keyed in on the phone which is it's obviously one of the biggest distractions for the driver, but a lot of these young, inexperienced drivers are going to be tooling around with their friends.
Yes.
And yeah, they'll be yelling at them, and like, that's a huge problem.
It's
like,
a major problem.
How do we fix that?
Well, and this is the thing that my son, again, had showed me, but same thing. We're in the car, and I don't always tell him to get off his phone when we're in the car, like if we're going somewhere close, but he'll say to me, "Oh, Dad, look at this." I'm like, "Hey, do you see I'm driving? Don't show me a video while I'm driving. Like, my eyes are here. Like, why would you want me to look over there to see something for 30 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever it is?" And that's been, he doesn't do it now, but that was like a pretty heavy, like, lesson. Like, then if he did that, okay, put your phone down for sure. Like, you need to start being aware of where we're driving, what direction we're going, what street we're at. Like, you need to start pretending like you're driving next to me. And we're at that point right now. Like, when I'm driving, you need to start pretending like you're driving. You see this car up here, how he's kind of inching out a little bit? Like, do you think he's going to go for it? Your eyes need to be on that, as well as the light, as well as the crosswalk. Like, there's a lot going on. And I think, again, like, if your kid is 14, 15, about ready to get into that driver position, all these things need to be lessons right now. And when you have a friend that's like, "Oh, look at this," and they're trying, and his friends are in the car with him, they're for sure going to say that. They're going to say, "Hey, check out my phone. Oh, did you see this?"
So you were talking about hands-free. I want to go back to that for a second. And that you were guilty, we've all been guilty of distracted driving. And so would you say that your distractions have gone down since the hands-free edition, and are they still present?
I'd say with hands-free, it has helped, and it's gone down a little bit. You can still keep your eye on the road. You don't have to, be over flipping through your phone or making a call. You can just say, "Call so-and-so." That works. So that helps. But I think, again, it's just you have to be aware when you're getting in your car. Like, if any of the drivers I have, let's say, if they're racing, nobody has their phone. Like, if you're doing something like racing a dirt bike, you're in your race car, you would never allow that distraction to happen during a race. So why are you going to let it happen when you're around more people than racing, with more circumstances, with people on street bikes? There's so much going on. Like, it's something that people need to be aware of. And, I don't know at this point, like, what the lesson plan is for young drivers. I'm going to know because my son's getting there, and I have been teaching him, to drive. When we go in the desert, he drives my truck. Like, when we're off road, he's been driving a Razor. Like, there's, in certain states, like, you're no problem. 14, he's riding a jet ski in Arizona. Like, there's a lot of responsibility given to kids at a very young age. They need the guidelines, and they need to know what problems can happen. And I think, by sheltering them and not teaching them right now as a parent, like, if your son's 14, your daughter's 14 or 15, you need to be teaching them to drive while you're driving. So they're sitting shotgun, they're learning about, potential, like, okay, this is a stale yellow light. What are you going to do? Are you going to go, or are you going to hit your brakes? Like, we have that game too. What is it? Okay, well, it's always hit your brakes. At your age, it's hit your brakes. There's other cars that might want to dart out. Like, it's simple things, crosswalks, just paying attention to your surroundings. And again, I don't let my son drive with other kids that just got their license. There's no way. I can't even, think about the amount of distractions that's going on with 4 teenage boys in a car. Like, they're all looking at videos. Every one of them's got their own TikTok going, music going. The driver is very new at this. He's barely able to probably get his license. And then he's got all these other distractions. Like, it's crazy. I think, as parents, it is our responsibility to lay down these rules and make sure, there's no distractions going on, especially during these early years of driving.
Do you think it's getting through to your son, or is he kind of brushing it off?
No, I think it's getting through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think probably a good portion of the newer drivers think it's sort of like a cool thing to be able to like multitask while you're driving, or like, oh, I'm a good, be able to say like, I'm a good driver, it's okay, sort of thing. Like, how do we skew the conversation away towards that into a more effective one where it's, there's actual serious consequences to being distracted, but 99% of the time you won't be affected by them, maybe if you're lucky, but like, how do we get through to not just young people, but also the people on the roads who refuse to put their phones down?
I mean, I'm again at that point. Like, is there some technology that the auto manufacturers can start designing to make this curve happen a little bit quicker, to where there's reminders to put your seatbelt on? Should there be some like distinct reminders before you start the car that reminds you? Maybe. Is that what's going to have to happen? Probably, because if you're born with a cell phone in your hand, you're going to be attached to it no matter what you're doing.
The average American, there's a study that was done recently, and it says the average American will spend 5 years of their life on social media throughout the course of their life.
Irrelevant social media. Like, that's just flicking through funny videos or
YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.
5 years of your life.
And that only amounts to an hour and a half, roughly, a day.
No way. So kids are getting 6-8 hours like of videos, and like, I guarantee my son's is up there. They check it they check it during class, check their assignments, check it between classes. He rides the bus, so he's on it there too. I'm sure his is crazy, so it's important. I need to be aware of that too. And then, like, there needs to be quiet time where there's no phones. Which, again, I still think, I feel like we're better than everyone that we hang out with and all of his friends. He still thinks he's deprived of the amount of screen time and what he has compared to his friends. Like, because his video game stuff, he gets to play for 1 hour on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's it. That's your Xbox time. That's your video game time.
Wow.
And he thinks that's crazy.
Yeah.
Then it is.
Some kids are spending like 3 hours every day, probably.
Yeah. And I ask them, do they know how to ride dirt bikes? Do they play sports? Like, no. They're just locked in.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Well, it's going to start with just more conversations in households across the country. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk about it, and hopefully this will generate more.
Well, I mean, and I don't know that we've even talked about it yet, but I mean, I'm sure you have a story. I'm sure everyone has a story of something that happened because of not paying attention. And do you want to take someone's life by doing something stupid on your phone or in your car, like that you never meant to happen? Like, no one wants to live with that. But you were distracted and you clipped a bicycle or a motorcycle, or yourself. You rear-ended somebody and had it. Like, there's plenty of stories like that, and I don't want to have that story. I for sure don't want my son to. I'd have a tough time understanding that story, knowing that your child got into an accident or someone's, life or friend's life was taken because of just a lapse in like good judgment for a minute. Like, no one wants to live with that. So there's a bigger problem, and there's a big picture here that people, myself included, that you need to be aware can happen. It might never, but there's enough stories and there's enough situations out there of people that are in tears right now over something like this.
Right. And unfortunately, I think for most of the people, it's taken having a direct or pretty close connection to someone who's been either seriously injured or killed to fully understand it. So that's the goal of like these conversations, and where this project will go is hopefully to prevent, get people to understand it before something serious happens. Yeah.
I mean, I grew up like wanting to ride a street bike so bad, and as a kid, like that's, you want to be able to, have your freedom and ride your motorcycle on the street. Like there's There's absolutely no way I would even, at this point, be on the street again riding. And there's plenty of kids that want to ride too. Like there's so many distractions going on. Like I for sure would not feel safe riding a street bike around. Like that's why we take everything to the hills, to the desert. So if, I mean, you can ask that question to a lot of people. A lot of people say they feel safe and they'll always blame the street bike, but it's not, it's usually not the street bike that crashed by himself. Very rarely. So
Right.
would you want to be riding a street bike with you driving? I mean, a lot of people wouldn't take that question or that answer seriously. It's like, you know, you're distracted. You know, you've made some bad decisions. Have you almost hit something? Have you almost clipped the trash can? Or you like, yeah. Could that have been somebody? Yeah. It's not a joke.
No, definitely not. Well, you've been very generous with your time. Just to close out, can I get you to say that you'll promise to drive distraction free?
Yeah, I'll promise to drive distraction free.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I know, anyone with a bike in their garage, I feel like gets it.
Yeah.
And it's like a pretty short conversation. But I've talked to a bunch of these Maxxis athletes who openly admit that they're on their phones while they're driving. So it's like,
yeah,
you gotta get it in your head that you could be
right.
Any time that you decide to do that, there could be someone in front of you that you don't see.
Yeah. Well, and it'll spark the conversation of whoever's in my car, why, when they call me and it sends them a message back, this person's not accepting calls. Well, then there's a few more people that are now understanding that I'm taking it seriously.
Right.
Or when someone else is in my car, telling them the same thing, like, hey, are you driving this way? So
right.
It starts here. Yeah.
Thank you. You're a big help. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Sweet. Hello again. Thank you so much for listening to that conversation I had with Lou Lewis. It sounds kind of funny to say Lou Lewis, Lawrence Lewis. And as I mentioned in the beginning, super interesting perspective. Hope you found that to be true as well. And maybe you feel inspired by what Lou had to say to put the phone down while you're driving. And if not, I hope you still consider it. Turn on driving focus on your phone. It's a feature that's not turned on by default. It absolutely should be, and it absolutely should be turned on your phone so that you don't get those pesky notifications while you're driving that tempt you to take your eyes off the road and put other people and yourself in harm's way. So go to eyesUpRide.com/resources to learn how you can do that on your phone today. It's super easy, super quick. It'll be worthwhile, and it'll help spread the message. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe, leave a positive review. It really helps me out. I love hearing feedback from listeners and those who help support and make this whole thing possible. Nonetheless, thank you for listening and for being here. You're helping save lives and make our world a bit safer, a bit happier, and a bit healthier. And that is the goal of Eyes Up. So in 2 weeks, we're closing out July with a conversation that I had with two brothers, Cody and Hunter Miller. They are a racing duo, and that's what I'm going to leave it at because cliffhangers get people coming back. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a great couple of weeks. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.